Good evening and welcome to Referee Corner on this Monday, March 8th. I'm your host, Earl Basin, and joining me is one of the Bermuda Football Association referee instructors, Mr. Lyndon Rayner. Good evening, Mr. Rayner. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening.
We really want to home in on the new handball rule or the changes that IFAB have agreed to with the new handball rule. I want to emphasize that because there's been so much discussion, opinions, and the whole like, but giving the opportunity to kind of take our time and spell it out for what the referee will deem as intentional or unintentional, without the ability to have another look at it, such as the professionals do. We want to make sure that everybody's given the opportunity to kind of read it, understand it, and move on with it. But first of all, Mr. Rayner, obviously they've sat down. They've looked at what they have now, what they changed it to now, and it wasn't working. It causing more confusion than anything else, I think. What is your take on it?
I don't really think for me, it was not really more confusion. Actually, it tied it up the law. So I think once you have to understand what the handball law is.
Okay.
Right. And once you fully understand what the handball law is, then what they've done and the recent amendments fluid very easy. It is again on the law 12. Law 12 is very subjective. Mm-hmm. In law 12 talks about fouls and misconduct, and everything's in the opinion of the referee. Same with the LBW law in cricket is in the opinion of the umpire. Mm-hmm. And so there's an expectation that the official who is applying the law is has a full understanding of the law and then its application. And of course, the law can't always fit every scenario. Mm-hmm. There are always going to be some things that fall into the gray area. A good example in the offside incident that took place with Ashton Villa and forget the other team, where the player came back from the offside position, and it was a big cry because he went and played the ball. But if you look at in the offside law, it says that when in the opinion, well, put it this way, offside law says that when the ball's last touch or played by an attacking player's teammate, and it goes to him, he shall be deemed to be offside if he touches the ball or thus gains an advantage or one of those or seeking interference with penalty. But once you deem the defending player to have played the ball, mm-hmm. then the player in the offside position is no longer offside.
True.
So that is why that goal was allowed to stand. But FIFA there kind of, to me, kind of made it a little. Added something to it, which was saying it was in the spirit of the game, but I'll leave that alone. As far as I'm concerned, the guy he fairly played the ball and game on.
Right. There was a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk about incident that took place in Europe. In England. I'm gonna put up this picture, and I've got to take this down. But there's a player, an attacking player, who's had a shot, or a defender who's had a shot. Either the attacker or the defender is standing there with his hand to his side, and that was deemed a handball, where the hand is up against the body. How do we explain that? How do we explain that being called a penalty, where clearly there's no intent by the defender. There appears no intent by the defender, and a man is blasting the ball from maybe 3 yards away, if that, 2 yards away.
Yeah, again, it's the interpretation, and based on what you just described to me, I'm very hard pressed to understand why would that be called a handball if the player has his hands down by his side and you're talking about less than 3 yards away, and the ball is blasted at him, and the ball hits his hand, I don't see how you can justify calling that a handball. So this is some of the things that has caused the controversy in the game, because it's the inconsistency in the application of the law, not just from one game to the other, but inside that very same game.
Yes, yes. Actually, I think what it was that was the defender trying to clear the ball. It hit the striker. The ball there rebounded to one of his players, and the guy scored.
Now, in that case, the law actually used to say that where the ball accidentally hit the attacking player's hand and either he scores a goal from it or immediately creates a goal scoring opportunity, then it shall be deemed to be a handball.
Okay. That's where I guess a lot of people look at it. It has to be a gray area there, because if his hand wasn't there and the ball hit his thigh and done the same thing, where is his hand supposed to be?
Well, with the attacking player, they specifically done that with the attacking player because they don't want goals to be unfairly scored against the spirit of the game.
Right.
So therefore, they're saying that whilst it's an accidental handball, he is now benefiting from it, and he scores or his teammate scored. That's really a goal that goes against the spirit of the game. So that's why the law was actually changed to specifically say that, because previously to the law being changed recently, it made no mention of accidental handball, and referees had to interpret that whole scenario, what you just described, where the ball hits the attacker's hand, it drops down to his feet, and he puts it into the goal. We all consider that to be unfair goal against the spirit of the game. But there was no definition of that in the law. Then people came up with that definition, and depending on which league you watch, you went from one extreme of interpretation to another one, and it just left people confused, left players confused. And now FIFA has even made it even quite more clearer on this whole ball accidentally hitting the striker's hand, and either goal resulting from it. So when we get into a bit more about the new changes, you'll see that they actually changed the law again on that scenario.
Okay, all right. Actually, we want to get into that because following this clarification, it's a handball offense if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand, arm, for example, moving the hand or arm towards the ball. Okay, so that's always been the case, isn't it?
That is the essence of the handball offense.
Yes.
Where a player deliberately touches the ball with his hand or arm. For example, the hand moving towards the arm, towards the ball. That is the basis of handball in football.
Okay. Then
it goes on to say, and I'll read directly from the law so people don't think it's Lennon that's making this up.
Right.
Is a handball offense if a player touches the ball with his hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of the hand or arm is not, this is the new amendment, sorry.
Right, yes.
When the position of the hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. By having the hand or arm in such position, the player takes a risk of the hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalized. So I'll stop there, right?
Okay. So similar to this picture.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
So what they're saying now is early in the season, Lindor from Man United was penalized. He was running. His arm was in that running motion.
Yes.
And the ball hit his hand, and they blew for a penalty. Now, all the pundits are saying that can't be. But the referees interpreted that his hand was in an unnatural position. It was away from his body. Therefore, he made his body bigger. And that's why they called it a handball offense.
Right.
But with the new amendment now, the referee has to look at and consider, is what he's doing, let me back up. We talk about this natural position of a hand or arm. Ordinary, a person standing straight. The ordinary position, natural position, is the hands down by the side. But we don't play football that way. We run, we jump, and and our hands are there to use for us to balance ourselves when we're doing certain actions. Like you've played football before. How many times did you go up with a hat with your hands straight down by your side?
Never ever.
Because you use it for leverage and whatnot. So now they're saying if the player is doing this sort of action, that may be considered to be a natural position of the body now.
Right. Okay. All right. To further go on to what you were saying, by having the arm in such a position, the player takes the risk. Okay. Directly from their.
Right. So now it goes on to say that
directly from their hand or arm, even if accidentally, including by the goalkeeper or immediately after the ball has touched their hand. What
they're saying now in this new amendment is they are isolating it now right to the attacking player in itself, right? Because it says, so you have to go back to the top, and it says it is a handball offense if a player scores in his opponent's goal directly from the hand or arm, even if it's accidental, including by the goalkeeper, or immediately after the ball has touched the hand or arm, even if it's accidental. So what they're saying is the attacking player, if the ball bounces up and hits his hand and goes into the goal, no goal.
Right. Okay.
And that's the gender. So it's really just the attacking player now being penalized because he has directly benefited from ball hitting his hand by the ball going into the net.
Now, let me ask you this question, because it will be a sub to that you also have to deem if it's done intentionally or unintentionally, right?
Right. So the first thing that a referee has to determine was with every handball offense, as soon as the ball hits the player's hand or arm, he has to determine, was that a deliberate handball? That's his first action. And if he determines that is a deliberate handball, then he immediately blows the whistle.
Yes.
Now, let's say the player is running and the ball hits his hand. He has to determine again, is this accidental or is this deliberate? Right? And we teach in deliberates that you must actually see the hand move deliberately towards the ball.
Okay.
And not so much the ball moving towards the hand. And so thereafter, so the other things he has to consider now is the position of the hand. Was the position of the hand as a consequence, using the law's wording, the consequence of the body movement, of the action that he was doing? So whilst they've kind of tied it up, it's now forcing the referee in about a 3-second, 4-second window to take in a lot of scenarios or a lot of elements of the handball offense and then apply it. And so therefore, it is imperative that a referee, when he walks into the field, understands the handball offense, because what we discussed here, he may have to make that decision in a matter of seconds on the field.
Yes.
And particularly in Bermuda, where we don't have VAR, he only has one chance to get it right.
Right. Now, how important is it that the referee assistants understand the same mechanisms of that law? Because there will be times that they will be closer than the referee to assist in that call.
I'll put it this way. For me, all 17 laws must be fully known by every official on that field. Whether you are the man in the middle, the 2AR, the fourth official, you all need to know the law, right? we no longer teach that just because you are the assistant referee that you only know about offside and throw in.
Right.
You have to know the law because, as you just pointed out, there may be times when an incident may happen out of the purview of the referee, and he's got to make that decision or assist the referee in making that decision.
Right.
And the referee has to have confidence in his AR,
right,
to give him the right decision.
Now, the other thing we often hear about consistency of officials, which to me is kind of a bit of hogwash. I honestly believe that as long as each official is consistent with what they do, that's a consistency, because you look at things differently. You're going to be at a different angle. I'm going to be at a different angle. So for us to call the same call each and every time, that's almost impossible if we're all involved in the game. But now you mentioned the fact that the referee would have 3 or 4 seconds to interpret everything that just happened to make a call of sorts once he's decided whether or not it's going to be deliberate or intentional or unintentional. Just looking at that, it's still down to the referee having to make a decision. Is that correct?
That's correct. And before we kind of move off, because we didn't finish the definition. It now, as we talked about, the ball hitting the attacking player's arm and goes to his teammate, who scores or creates immediate goal scoring opportunity.
Right.
They've abolished that now, and they've said that an accidental handball that leads to a teammate scoring a goal, or having a goal scoring opportunity will no longer be considered an offense. An
offense, yes. So technically, this would have been a goal had that law not been in place right now.
Well, I thought this was the one where the defender.
I made the mistake because that was the defender trying to clear it. It hit this guy's hand and dropped to the feet of his opponent, his attacking player who scored.
Correct. So now that goal could stand.
Would stand. Right. So yeah, because I mean, it's hard for any footballer. I mean, you got somebody standing 3-4 feet away from you, and they're trying to clear the ball, and your hands are by your side, and the ball slams up against your hand, unintentional, because you're not even looking to see where the ball is. But a goal is taken away because my hand is in a natural position, but because it hit my hand, you have to take it away. But no, here lies the problem. The only person that would have seen it hit their hand was if you go back to review it. If that's open play, that's a goal. And then what happens is somebody that actually sees it says, "Oh, the referee missed it," and then it becomes the referee's fault as opposed to the, for what you consider the fair play.
Correct. And I want to clear up another picture that we saw. The one where
this one?
No, the other one.
This one.
That one there, right? That may become more debatable because his hand is above his head.
Right, and away from his body.
Is away from his body. And so therefore the law talks about if his hand is above his head or shoulder,
right,
then it's a handball. Now it may become subjective. Is that a natural position for the jumping that is done? I will argue probably not, because when we jump for a header, we don't jump with our hands way above our heads. So that still may be deemed a handball because his hand is right above it. His hand is above his head, the shoulder height. When we jump, we usually jump and our hands are almost shoulder level.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because well, let me put you in another scenario. So the number 6, right? Because the number 15 is going up with his hand above his head, but he's only done that because the number 6 has bumped him. Number 7 hits the ball.
Now you add another element that rather.
Well, right, but I'm saying, but then that could possibly be where his hand is in an unnatural position.
Right. So then the referee will have to determine that number 6 fouled number 15.
Right.
and then the handball is
Null and void.
anyway, and there's a foul
Right.
going on.
However, if he misses it, because we know there's contact that everybody misses, and especially if you leave your feet, a little nudge here or there, just to get you off balance. Those things, that's all part of the game. But obviously, you have to have good understanding with the referee assistants as well, because you as the referee, you're not going to see everything. But having that communication can help.
Right, and it also comes with referees positioning themselves so they're not seeing the same angle as the AR. So what we teach referees movement is referee, play, and AR.
Right.
But the referee has to kind of maneuver around different angles to make sure that he can see play one way and the AR is looking in another way, and hopefully both angles give you the correct view.
Right.
But as we know, football is a dynamic game. It's constantly moving.
Yes.
You get a player running across you as soon as someone does something, and everyone is screaming, and the only person who hasn't seen it is the referee.
You're blinded. Yeah. And I mean, I often say that to people myself, that maybe he was blinded, but it's clear maybe he was blinded. You know what I mean? So those are the type of things that we're always up against. Other clarifications were approved, including Law 11, the Law 12 definition for handball, whereby the arm ends at the bottom of the armpit, must be used when judging whether a player is in an offside position. Can you explain that?
So if you go back to a couple of games, I think at the start of the season, maybe, I can't remember, it was this season or whatever, where they were calling the player off because his armpit was ahead of his opponent, right? Well, what they're saying here, you got to take the way we penalize handball now with the lower end of the sleeve, from the sleeve down, lower edge of the sleeve down, is considered the arm.
Right.
Anything above the sleeve length, short sleeve, or below or above the armpit level is now considered to be not a handball.
Right.
So the ball can hit me right here, right? It's not below the sleeve, it's not below my armpit, though it's my arm, because we used to teach that before. The arm was from here to your fingers. Saying that, no, if we're telling you the handball is from the armpit down, or the edge of the sleeve down, then we must apply that with offside. So you can't penalize the player for being offside because his armpit is a little further than the second last defending player.
Okay. So if I'm hearing this, it's got to be another part of your body that's got to be a leading edge.
Right. So the thing is that in order to be declared offside, there must be a part of your body that can legally play the ball.
Okay.
So a player's arm can't. He can't. An attacking player can't use his arm, so we can't use that as the offside decision.
Okay. All right. And then Law 12, the offense of using a trick to circumvent the law against the goalkeeper handling the ball from a deliberate kick from a teammate will apply at goal kicks, and instigator will be cautioned. The instigator will be cautioned.
Yeah. So what this basically means that I take a goal kick, and the ball's rolled along the ground. I'll give two examples. It's rolled along the ground. The defender or his teammate can get on his hands and knees and nudge the ball back to the goalkeeper so he can pick it up. Because remember, the goalkeeper can only touch the ball with his hand if it's passed to him by his teammate by his head, chest, or thigh.
Right.
And so one of the things is getting down on all fours and nudging the ball back. The other one is where I pass the ball to you and you flick it up and head it back to me.
Right.
That's circumventing the law. And so what they're saying now is the minute the person does that, it's immaterial whether the goalkeeper touches the ball. The offense happens where the player committed the trick.
So that'll be considered an indirect free kick from that spot?
Indirect free kick from that spot.
With a caution as well?
Yes.
Okay. Funny, I haven't seen anybody try that yet, but
you don't see too much in the professional level, but you certainly will see it at the amateur level.
Okay. Yeah, the amateurs are always trying to get away with something.
Yeah.
Looking at the other things that they talked about changing, what were the things that obviously you guys are going to have to work on in the summer? Because when do these rules come into effect?
June 1st.
Okay, so throughout the summer.
But some competitions, it comes in effect June 1st, but FIFA gives leeway to some competitions that already may start before June 1st to allow the law to apply the law there. Like for instance, the United States the MSL starts their league in April.
April, yes. And
so they will be able to implement the new law, because you don't want them to start and then come June 1st. They have to implement these new laws. So you would have half of the season playing where you apply the old law, and then come June 1st, you have to apply the new law, and that's not fair, because girls that should have been scored or disallowed would have been.
Yes, yeah. They also they were discussing the temporary amendment to Law 3, which allows the option to permit teams to use up to 5 substitutes. I know in international games they use 5 substitutes, but that I know the association had turned that down at the last time they were coming back. Do you know if and when we do come back, they will allow teams to use the 5 substitutes?
The 5 substitutes was used when we was coming out of COVID.
Yes.
By the professional leagues. It was not a permanent change to the law. It's something that each national association can determine. But internationally wise, it's 3 substitutes, right? Though that being said, in your competition rules will determine how many subs that you can use, regardless whether it's in COVID or not.
Right.
But for international competitions, at the moment, it's still 3.
Right. Now they're also making referees doctors, because they're saying that in the very near future you'll be allowed another substitute if a player gets a concussion. So you would have to.
So what their law is saying that, and every law that they create, particularly laws between 1 and 4. Really deals with the safety of players.
Yes.
And even Law 12 deals with the safety of players. So what they're saying here is that players go up and get a header, they strike their heads, and therefore they may have to go off injured. And what FIFA is saying that it's kind of unfair that the player is having to leave the field because of an accident. And so therefore, because concussions are a very big discussion point in FIFA at the moment, they decided that, in all fairness, a team should be entitled to have to replace that player because of the concussion incident, the clash of heads. And so what it also does, it allows. So my team has a player going down injured because of a concussion, and I've already made my 3 substitutions. It allows me to replace that player for those purposes. And therefore, the other team is now entitled
to utilize another sub. But is that only for concussion?
Yes. It's specifically just for concussion. So in the professional level, the medical component of clubs setup, most of them have highly trained medical staff.
Right.
And they are now able to determine if a player has a concussion. In fact, at one point in the EPL, they initially were appointing a doctor that was neutral to both teams.
Right.
To examine the player and determine that he had a concussion or didn't have a concussion. I don't believe that they do that now, but I believe it's we're not playing around people's safety. If a player has, I think any person would be wrong to say no, he ain't got no concussion, allow the player to stay on the field. And you will find in international matches, in international competitions, there's always a medical doctor who's there for various reasons besides tending to a player's broken leg. And he may now be required to add the extra boat to his duties to determine whether that player has a concussion.
Right. Now, has there been any talk? Because I haven't seen anything come out on it. I just see the end result, and you would probably know, if not know, can ask. Have they determined whether or not you have to identify your substitute that will be your concussion substitute, or will you just be able to pick anyone that's left on the bench?
No, you'll be able to pick anyone that's left on the bench. There's no particular player that's been designated as being the concussion sub.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for clearing those things up for me. Appreciate you coming on. Anything else that you think one that would watch this, that's not watching now, can watch later, that can pick up tips as opposed to screaming at the referee when football starts?
No, I think what's going to be needed is an educational piece with coaches on the new changes, particularly in and around handball.
Yeah.
Because as we say, just because what you saw on TV may not always be the right application of the law.
Right.
For a good example, Lee Mason in the match where he disallowed to go, allowed to go, disallowed to go.
Yes.
Got himself into a whole mess. And in actual fact, that was a failure on VAR and the officials during the game, because they all got it wrong. Someone
he is suffering from a calf strain. He is suffering, but didn't tell nobody.
Yeah. Someone had to tell him, hey, that's a goal.
Right.
But it is what it is. He buckled to pressure.
Well, again, even the professionals get it wrong sometimes.
Correct.
Yeah, so it is what it is. All right. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your night, see?
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Cool.